Give to Jaden Terry, starter step, up the middle of the field, 40, big hole 50, he's gone 45, at the 30, left sideline 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Jaden Terry. The Tank with an answer. Give read option keeper, whole bunch of space, at the 40, got the 35, 30, up the middle of the field, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Bryce Underwood. And welcome to game night. Nate Dreyer, Chandler Tim with you here. Taking it at the 14-yard line with a feet offset by Tyson Mann. Jimmy's over the 30. Burst of speed at the 40. Right sideline 50. Able to get away from the tackle. Walking the tightrope at the 30. 25-20. All alone. 10-5. Touchdown Grandville. Snap to Underwood from the gun. Fake handoff on the RPO. Throwing left side. Caught Yarbrough. Sidesteps the defender at the 5. Walks into the end zone. Touchdown Belleville. The Tigers put it away. 34-17. They're going to go back-to-back. Fake handoff, keeper left side over the 45-yard line, outside the number of the 40, 35-30, left sideline 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, 7 touchdowns for Mason McKenzie, and Caledonia has just about served this one up on ice. All right, hello YouTube, hello world, football is back. It is the Tailgate Report here on Michigan Game Night. Nate Dreyer, Chandler Timmer, CT. We'll see if we even remember how to do this. I think I said on social media, it's everyone's second favorite West Michigan high school football show. It is the Tailgate Report. It's if Bakita and Hutton are too smart for you, you have us. Thankfully, we have a great show. We have Coach Stiegel on to help preview the season. We're going to go through awards. We'll preview the OK Red. We'll do a ton more. Chandler, football, we're back. How excited are you?
Very excited. We go through the football season and basketball season last year. Feels like we're covering games nonstop, and then the summertime just completely drops off a cliff. Nothing, and I've been looking forward to this preview show here for a while now, getting back into the swing of things and knowing how crazy the schedule will get and covering some football here coming up as we get the season started this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll kind of run through here now and essentially get through some of the housekeeping stuff. First off here for game night for this year. So first off, our schedule, as many of you are aware if you follow us on social media and so forth, as this page loads slowly, we will not have a broadcast week 1. That's my fault. I apologize. I'm off working the IndyCar race at Gateway this weekend, so we were real close, I will say, to getting it to work. There was nearly a schedule situation where I'd be able to do the game Thursday and immediately in the morning drive out there, but the way load and everything worked, unfortunately, I can't quite make it, so that's my fault. You can solely blame me. If you want to blame Chandler, go for it. But
you don't want me there alone, I don't think.
Well, actually, I think they might want that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll see.
But we will be back week 2. We'll have Grandville Davison at Davison, so it's the MGN road trip to the other side of the state. That'll be just a radio game. For Grandville home games, we will have video this year. I was there at the scrimmage last week testing that out, so we will have some of that coming your way. But of course, that schedule, you can check us out, michigansportsradio.com/MGN, or link through our site. We have the first of what the schedule looks like. We'll be back with another Tailgate Report next week as well to recap Grandville's game against Grand Blanc, who they play at home to open up the season. We on this page will link to the Grandville Athletics YouTube feed like we often do. So you can at least come here. Our sponsors will have a shout-out. Of course, thanks Centennial Securities, Farmers Insurance, back with us again. A little bit different. We're actually still in the process of getting things worked out, but Farmers, again, back with us with their Grandville area and area agencies. Now, one thing I also want to talk about is I need everyone to buy stuff. So, I don't need, but I would like everyone to buy stuff because it looks so cool. Now, neither of us, because we're idiots, aren't wearing any of the merch that's for sale. That's a major oversight, and that's a problem. But through Michigan Game Night and the Michigan Sports Radio page, you can go to the MGN shop. We have shirts. We have water bottles. We have hats. We have more shirts. We have more cups. We have more shirts. We have a shirt that has my logo on it because I'm a self-centered person like that. And we've got even more. So check that out. Buy some stuff. It's I've gotten some samples of it. It's pretty high quality stuff on the whole. We did what we could to keep the prices kind of low. We're partnered through a company that essentially can make them one at a time, so we don't have to stock a whole bunch, and we can have a really big amount of things for sale for that reason. So make sure you go ahead and check all of that different stuff out on the MGN shop. All right. I think that's all for the open. I think I've run through everything I need to run through. Follow us, or YouTube. You're watching this on YouTube. You know where that is. Like, subscribe to the YouTube. And without further ado, we're going to step aside. When we come back, what everyone's actually here for, it's Eric Stiegel with the 2023 Bulldogs preview.
Can you name the 10 winners of the Nobel Peace Prize or the last 5 Miss Americas? The point is the applause dies and the achievements are forgotten. But can you name 3 friends who helped you through tough times or teachers who encouraged you in school? We remember those who make a difference in our lives. I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities. What matters to us are the personal relationships we have with our clients, helping them build a secure financial future. As a Centennial Securities customer, you know what I mean. If you're not, isn't it about time?
Member SIPC and FINR.
MGN, here's the driver. I am Chandler 2.
Oh, wow.
We're going to leave this in.
All right.
This is staying in the show. He is Chandler Timmer. I am Nate Dryer. This is what happens when you work together for 6 years. The names are one.
We're just one, yeah.
Chandler Timmer, Nate Dryer. Chandler Timmer, Nate Dryer. Michigan game night, tailgate report. We clearly have to stop talking. I do at least. I will see you all. I see you too. Friday night, Grandville, Wyoming. I think 6:30. We're on the air for that. Goodbye. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Scott Bates Farmers Insurance Agency pregame show. And he has returned. He's still on the beach. We've been bugging him about it all week long, but Chandler Timmer joins me here on the Bates Agency pregame show. CT, you seem to be doing better than the rest of us.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty nice down here. I kind of like covering basketball this way.
I'm sure you do.
Looking to this moving forward.
I can't blame you one bit. All right.
Rather than just always relying on one player.
Yeah, Scott Bates Agency pregame show continues here on game night on Michigan Sports Radio. CT, I think the next thing that you have to mention most notably in this contest is break me every time still. Every single time that happens, it gets me. The winners still go to the Heartland student section last year at the Breslin Center. Those guys win every time. Season. And we'll wrap up our broadcast with the Heinz Orthodontics smile of the game. Grown at that point guard position. Tough backcourt in general. Getting to some of those other pieces that we have out there. After 3 years, it finally almost came down on me. Good catch. I don't know what kid caught that, but that was a good catch. But regardless, a tough backcourt. Your flight's at 5 or your...
Yeah, the flight out of Panama City is like at 5, and we don't get home till like midnight, so.
That sucks. So you're actually... That was a lie. You're not going to be tuning in.
Yeah, no, if I'm at the airport at that time, I will be, but I'm likely missing most of it.
Okay. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to game night. And you know it's football time because we've got our first Coach's Corner of the year. Grandville head coach Eric Stiegel joins me for the first time this year. Coach, how are you? How excited are you for football season?
Oh, I'm excited. Ready to rock and roll here.
Absolutely. And let's just get into it because this is, I think this is a team statewide. I think, you were so young last year and bringing back so many pieces. And I think there's been some growing chatter about that great talent, a little bit smaller roster in terms of numbers, but a lot of really, really good talent. Tell me kind of first the 1,000-foot view of this team, their talent, their work ethic, kind of the potential you've seen throughout camp into the scrimmages.
Well, I think it's a really tight group, and you mentioned it is a small roster for us because this is one of the smallest senior classes we've had. However, with that, there is some really good experience on that senior class, some guys that did some really good things on both sides of the ball last year. And there's some experience in the junior class because we played some sophomores last year that had big roles. So we kind of look at those guys as different kind of players. So as much as the roster maybe is not as big as it has been, we do feel like we have pretty good depth across the board. With kids that have played, and we feel really good about what we have coming back, and some of the newcomers that we have that are going to be stepping into roles and developing as the season goes.
Yeah, and let's as we've done in the past, kind of the preseason, run through some of the different groups, and let's start with a couple guys we did see at the quarterback position. Of course, Cash Ruff coming back for his senior year. And, we saw a little bit of Ethan Newville as well as the junior, and I know he played some of the scrimmages as well.
Right.
But Cash as the senior, I mean, obviously his size, his potential is definitely
Right.
there. Tell me about him. Tell me about this quarterback group, because it's always deep, and it looks like it's a very high ceiling for these guys.
Right. Cash is a guy we really think a lot of. I mean, like you said, he's a big kid. He's athletic. He's got a scholarship ball from Davenport, probably as an athlete, a defensive back, where he played mostly last year. However, again, we did see him in the playoff game before he broke his hand, actually, against Caledonia. So, and he played well there. He's a guy that's got a big arm. He's athletic. And we think he can make all the throws that we need to have, and we think he's also a very good runner. So he's a guy that we're going to rely on in key spots, and someone that will keep defenses honest, and also be able to distribute the ball to our running backs and tight ends as we go. And Ethan Newville too had a really good summer for us. He'll probably start in the defensive backfield for us. Great ball skills, very smooth athlete. I thought played really well in the scrimmage yesterday too. So, overall we feel really good about that group, and what Cash will be our guy going forward, and we're gonna follow his lead, and we're gonna make sure that we kind of continue to kind of build the offense around him.
And, of course, the group that everyone always talks about, because you're a Power T team, but especially this year they're going to talk about is that running back group, which is, so good. Of course, Jaden Terry, the sophomore, with a D1 offer, he leads it. But Sadinsky, Kopko, all the depth as well that you guys have from Graverson and beyond. I mean, this is a really, really stout group.
Right. I think you said it. I mean, Jaden, and rightly so, gets a ton of the attention, and he should, because he's one of the best running backs in the state. It's a sophomore, an electric kid. So obviously he's a guy that, one, we're gonna dedicate a lot of our planning to get him the ball in different ways, and but I'm sure defenses at the same point are also going to try to scheme him out of it. Carson Kopko ran for about 1,000 yards last year. Really good receiver out of the backfield at a fullback spot. Runs the trap play really well. We think a lot of him, and he's had a great off season. Has put on some size. Very, very fast kid. Easton Sadinsky played a lot last year when Tyson Mann was injured. As a sophomore, he'll be a guy that we count in the backfield. Very good receiver. Athletic downfield. And I think you hit it. We do have a lot of depth. With Reed Graverson, Braylon Haney, who's a sophomore. Emery Moody, who's a junior, and Miguel Rojas, who is a junior. So we have a lot of guys back there that can do a lot of good things. And in the scrimmage, again, we saw all of those guys do really good things. So I think going forward, that just lets us, be able to do some things, whether it's package personnel or get guys rest, or just do some different things that will help our offense. Again, move the ball down the field, chew clock, big plays, all those things.
All right, next I think we'll kind of almost have to combine the tight end and the offensive line a little bit while we talk about them this year, because you're going to have guys that are doing both. I mean, Big Mike Medeo is listed and going to be playing some tight end, wearing number 87, a lot of other returners. Tell me about that mix of blockers and pass catchers you have at tight end and on the offensive line.
Yeah, we have a big group there too. AJ DeHaan will step in at center for us. He was a backup last year. He'll be a senior. Really smart kid, intelligent, plays really well for us. The guard spots, Brett Becker started last year at right guard. He'll man that spot again. Daniel Wiley, who's a sophomore, will start at left guard. Big physical player for us. I think he's kind of really grown the past couple of weeks, and we expect him to do that as well. Tackle spot, Stephen Jackson, who is to me has had one of the best off seasons we've had. He's just a powerhouse kid. He'll play on both sides of the ball. Really explosive. Really, really proud of what he's done. Jay Weiss will be the right tackle. starting for us. He started in the playoff game last year. I thought had a really good scrimmage for us. And then you get to the tight end group, and there's a lot of guys there. And you start with Medeiros, who played tackle last year. We may mix and match him at some tight end tackle, so he could wear number 73 at times too, as his jersey last year if we're going to play him at some tackle. But he's obviously going to be a dominant edge blocker for us. That's why we have him there. But he has good hands. You look at Gibson Connolly, who's a 6'5", 200-pound junior who can get down the field catch, has really improved his blocking. Garrett Naraki, who's a sophomore, who will probably start at linebacker for us, is a really good athlete. I think one of the best athletes on our team. Really think a lot of him. And then you look at Justin LaCroix, whose brother Braden LaCroix played tight end for us last year. Did some good things in the scrimmage. This is his first year playing football, so it's going to be, I think, a learning curve for him. But he's done really well, so far. So we think well him, and then also Isaiah Lauka, who's one of the best tight ends on the JV team. Had an injury a little bit this summer that kind of set him back, but he's starting to get back in the swing of things too. So we think that's a really deep group for us. And I think for us, it's just finding the right combination of guys that, what they can do, in terms of playing to their strengths, in that, certain guys are probably a little better downfield threats. Certain guys are maybe better, a little more stout in the run game. So it's just finding that right combination and mixing those guys with the offensive line and the running back crew to get the most out of our team.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm certainly so excited to see that offensive mix come together this year. Let's flip it to the other side of the field. Let's talk about the defense. I think there's probably a few more newcomers, maybe release new guys filling in on the defense on the whole, but let's kind of do the same thing. Let's start this time up front, the defensive line. I think there are several returners there. Tell me about the mix on the defensive line this year.
Well, yeah, I think the defensive line, we're very deep up there. I mean, some of those guys play offense, but, we'll start again. We'll start, I think, Emery Moody at an end, who came up, played against East Kentwood and played in the playoffs for us, is a really good edge player for us, defensive end. Brett Becker will play some end for us, too, who's starting an offense. You also see Cam Bruker out there for us. Out there at end. And you go inside, I think we have a lot of depth in there. Stephen Jackson, who I talked about, has played really well for us. Carson Kubzak, who didn't play in the scrimmage yesterday, held him out, but will be okay for week 1. Will be in there. He had a great summer for us. Mike Medeiros, Jay Weiss, Daniel Wiley, all those guys will kind of fit inside as well as Justin LaCroix. So we think we have a lot of depth up there in terms of that. And again, some of those guys do play offense, but the nice thing is we have a lot of them. So we feel we can keep them fresh, rotating them with that and not lose a lot going from, the starter to the backup or to the rotational guy. We feel like we're going to be strong with our numbers in there.
Yeah, going back one more level. I mean, the linebacker position and Coach Landis's defense is so important with how he mixes things and so forth. Reed Graverson, he was there as a sophomore, returns in the middle of things. Tell me about the rest of the mix there as well.
Yeah, great. Reed is a guy who also had a really good offseason, put on a lot of weight. I think understands the game better now. Really good two-way player for us, but we really going to count on him to kind of command the defense. Be a leader out there, be a great tackler in space, be a downhill thumper for us, really do everything. And then you go to the outside backers and you're looking at 2 sophomores, Garrett Naraki, you already talked about, and then Braylon Haney. Those guys, again, have had great summers, but we're also looking at them. We think that they're going to have to grow up quick. And again, that's part of the reason why, we want to scrimmage really good teams. So that those guys see really good players. They see the speed they have to play at. And for us as coaches, we know right away, I think we come out of that scrimmage saying we were really good at certain things, and there are areas that we need to improve on as well. I think when you look at the linebacker depth, Isaiah Lauka's in that mix. Anton Zinkowski's in that mix. Junie Figueroa is in that mix, played running back last year, has kind of moved more to a defensive player this year. So we have some guys, too, that we're also mixing in there, too, that, that we think can do some good things for us.
Yeah, for sure. And, defensive back, again, I think also, depending on how much cash can stay out there as well, you've got a lot of returners. Kot Sadinsky, who, essentially Sadinsky became the starter for the bulk of the season with Tyson's injury. So what does the defensive back spot look like?
Well, I think Avon Kot, who started for us last year, has had a great summer. He's done really well for us, and I thought had a really good scrimmage. Kind of one of the leaders on defense for us. Very intelligent player. And then you move around, and you have, I mentioned Ethan Newville, who played quarterback for us. He's got great ball skills. He'll play some corner and safety for us, depending on what looks we're in. Really feel good about him. Jackson Sanchez has played the field corner for us. Really good tackler. He's a wrestler. Can come up, do that, plays the ball really well. Has had, again, very good summer for us. Miguel Rojas, who we talked about as a fullback, has played well in the secondary. Jaden Terry will get some time out there. Easton, as we mentioned, will get out there. Cash will probably play some out there, and we're going to have him ready. And at the same time, I think, we also don't want our quarterback taking too many hits with that. And then also we had Josh Crater, who I thought had a good scrimmage. He's a sophomore for us, who we may mix and match him a little bit with the JV and the varsity with the fifth quarter rule, how we play him, but very athletic kid. He's a quarterback also, and I thought did some good things in the secondary for us in the scrimmage.
Yeah, so obviously a really, really unique mix. Let's kind of bring it together. And like you mentioned, you played the best of the best at the scrimmage that you had yesterday. The first 2 weeks, we know the OK, right? I don't even need to talk about it. We know how tough it is.
Right.
But, you're non-conference with Grand Blanc, Davison at Davison. Very difficult again. It's going to start right away. So tell me about that challenge that you're going to have immediately in the year.
Well, yeah, I think you look at Grand Blanc. We've got an initial look at their scrimmage. I think they look like they're an improved team. I thought their defensive line played really well in the scrimmage. Have some athletic slot receivers and a quarterback. There's going to be a sophomore, but he runs pretty well and throws pretty well. Good athlete, and they have some big kids outside that can challenge you, down the field. So I think, from a defensive perspective, they can put stress on you with some, very good schematics, but also challenge you with, a quarterback that can run and throw, and some kids that can create matchup problems for you because, you want to be stout in the run game, but you also have to, be able to cover the downfield pass game. So I think they're multifaceted on offense, well-coached team, and, was impressed with them from what we saw yesterday. Defensively, I think they're very physical. I think now, they'll probably feel a little better too after playing us a year than they did last year, kind of coming to that first time. And so I expect those guys to be, ready to go against us, and that they'll have a good plan. And again, I thought they were a very physical defense in the scrimmage, did really well. So, but they, again, we expect them to be a really good team, and, again, definitely an okay red caliber opponent. And I think you get the Davison, same kind of deal. Big size. From what we've seen from last year, we haven't looked at their scrimmage or anything yet, but, we know what they have coming back. Some big size up front, a running back that has D1 offers, a linebacker that can kind of be a two-way kid that's committed, I think, to Miami of Ohio. They got some kids that can play, and they're a physical team. So I think we'll be tested right away, with Grand Blanc and then Davison, before we get to the OK Red, which is good and bad, obviously. It's good and bad. You hope that you obviously win those games, and you come out healthy, and you come out ready to go for the gauntlet, those last 7 games in the conference, which are, every one of them is huge. So we'll be tested. And again, I think we were tested yesterday. I think we know where we're at. I told our kids that, I'm happy where we're at right now, but again, we got to be in a better spot next Thursday. We're probably, again, we're ready, but we're not as ready as we need to be yet to play, the schedule we play. So, we still expect growth in this next, week before we play Grand Blanc at home.
All right, that sounds good. I cannot wait. I'm sure you're the same way to get this season going. Coach, thanks again so much for your time. Go Bulldogs, and good luck.
All right, thanks a lot. Go Dogs.
All right, go Dogs. All right, welcome back. First off, as always, thank you to Coach Stiegel for his time helping us go through things. Recorded that the day after the big scrimmage that I and actually a lot of other media members too were at on Thursday of the week that we are recording this week before the season started. As Belleville, Muskegon, Traverse City West were all at Bulldog Stadium. Really cool event. It was packed. It was really cool on the whole to see that. But recorded that with him then, and as always, very thankful for his time, for everyone's time. Like I said, same thing this year. We'll get players on. We'll get coaches on. We'll get Eric several times again. So that's always great. Best program possible to work with. I've said that for a long time. As Tyson Mann brings back the opening kickoff against Byron Center last year, we'll play that behind us because it is now our Grandville season preview. So first off, Grandville's schedule this year. Grand Blanc, home. at Davison Road. I believe this is the hardest. If you can look at some different metrics, Goose Poop did his metric and has all the OK Red schools at the top. That might be a little bit inflated this year because the OK Red is going to be actually a little down, I think, compared to what it normally is, but still obviously tough. But I believe Grandville, you can make a real argument, has the toughest schedule in the state. But Grand Blanc at Davison, and then the OK Red starts at Grand Haven, East Kentwood, Hudsonville home, at West Ottawa. At West Ottawa, the other game we will not have a broadcast for. And then at Cal, and then Rockford, back-to-back weeks in week 7 and 8. And then Jenison will be senior night at home. And then, assuming everything goes well, which I think it will, is the playoffs then starting for the Bulldogs. But CT, I'm going to set it up for you this way first. Last year they had so many, Coach Stiegel talked about it, they had so many sophomores, so many juniors, so many young players on the team a year ago that it felt like last year was a little bit of the rebuild, and we saw some of that. Even though you had a guy like Carson Smith, Tyson Man, great seniors on that team for sure, and a little bit smaller senior class this year. Only about 40 kids on the team this year. But this to me feels like year one of 2 or 3 of a window opening for this program. I don't know how you would expound upon that, but this feels like the year of a window to do something pretty special with some of the talent that's there.
Yeah, I think it really is. When you look at what could have been a rebuilding year last year, if that's what you want to call it, pretty successful one. By all accounts, when you win a lot of games, 7 wins again for the Bulldogs last year. It's a number they've had a couple years in a row now. Kind of looking to take that next step as you've got some more experienced players now. I think your window that we might be talking about here maybe directly correlates with Jaden Terry and what eligibility he has as far as playing high school football for the next 3 years. As last year very successful for him, but I think not just Jaden Terry, of course, on this team. We've got a lot of younger players that saw some minutes now last year, played a lot of really good football. Had to face the tough test in Rockford and Caledonia, but I think you've got those young guys that have that experience now and are probably looking to take that next step this season. And the season ended against Caledonia in a way that they didn't even have a chance to really get into it in that playoff game. They ultimately lost. Carson Smith injured Carson Smith, Mike Medeiros both out going into the week. There's another injury too that I think I'm missing in there from the week. Cash Ruff breaks his hand then on the first driver. Kind of right away into that game after that. So, I think that kind of speaks for itself. Everyone got a little bit of playoff experience. Jaden had some great moments in that playoff game. But, I think this is kind of their first chance with, all right, here's this core, essentially a lot of the core back. We get a chance for year one to run it back. In an OK Red that we'll talk about in our OK Red preview, there's a lot of other teams that are kind of figuring things out this year. You mentioned Jaden Terry, and this team is going to, obviously, as always, it's a power T team. It's a Grandville offense that is high-powered in that offense. It's going to run through the run game, and it's a run game that in terms of the talent of running backs and the amount of talent returning on the offensive line. In fact, there's actually too much talent on the offensive line to the point that they're going to be, moving Mike Medeiros out to tight end some. All these great returners. Daniel Wiley, the sophomore, they like him so much. He's going to come up as a guard as well. So, they've got so much great talent on this offensive line to go along with the running backs. And the system they run, I believe it is fair to say that the ceiling for this team, if everyone stays healthy, if everyone plays, this could be one of the better, not the best, to go over the top, run games in the state of Michigan. Yeah, truly. I don't think that's a crazy statement when, Coach Stiegel always has his offense ready to roll and they execute very well and put up some big numbers. You look at, going back throughout his tenure at Grandville, the offenses that he's had, the numbers, points per game, whatever you want to, metrics, yards per game, anything you want to look at have been pretty ridiculous. And it's been a very high-quality offense for a long time. But I think you start looking at the players you got coming back, a quarterback that you think has a lot of potential, a running back room that had a lot of time last year, of course, as we just talked about, but then the offensive line is such a big part for this offense and this system. And when you've got guys all the way across the line that have experience, got size to the point where you're moving guys around and have a lot of flexibility, where going into the season, you've got that versatility along the line where you can really do a lot of different things. And I think the potential is very high for this offense.
There's so much depth in that running back room. I mean, you return Sadinsky at one running back, a guy that essentially had to become the starter when Tyson Mann went out and has a lot of the same skill set in terms of pass catching, but bigger version of Tyson Mann, different player, but similar in that way. Carson Kopko, among the better fullbacks, especially at running the trap play. Coach Stiegel directly talked about that they've had. He's back as a senior. Remember, Stadinsky's a junior.
Yep.
Jaden Terry, we're going to talk about him on his own in just a second. But then the depth of, Reed Graverson got a lot of play in that, scrimmage, and Coach Stiegel talked about the other depth. I mean, they've got a backup at every position plus some that I think they feel comfortable in. They can keep, again, even though it's a smaller roster, they're going to have to play a lot of guys both ways. There's an incredible depth there. I mentioned Jaden Terry, though. So the kid, listen, we first saw this kid when he was like in 6th grade. We had clips coming in of Cam Terry's brother and doing all these different things. I'm like, it's a middle schooler. How, what can it be? Yeah. And then last year, he's on the roster. When we first get the roster, I'm like, Chandler, I called you almost to be like, Chandler, he's on the roster as a freshman. I've never seen Grandville do anything like this before. And then the kid went out and ran for 1,000 yards and led the offense as a freshman. And then this offseason, he has a Central Michigan offer on the table. There's interest from a lot of places. I know Mel Tucker in Michigan State has interest. I don't know if Mel Tucker is going to be at Michigan State when Jaden is up to play. Sorry. Talk coming. But we just lost half our audience.
Yeah, probably.
But, this kid, to come in with as much hype as he did as a freshman running back in Grandville's system, and to deliver, and now to have this hype behind him again, and he'll probably deliver again. That's why there are so many statewide people talking about this team, even though they're young, even though they're, kind of not undersized, but smaller roster, and it's a year of a lot of juniors playing even. That's why so many people are talking about this team. We'll talk about the offensive line and the other pieces, but Jaden is capturing headlines for good reason. We see that week in, week out.
Yeah, I think definitely when you've got a solid team like what Grandville will have and had last year, and then you've got that star player like Jaden Terry that you can have as kind of the focal point and is going to put up numbers, has all the talent in the world, one of the best in the area when it comes to what he does and the athleticism that he has as far as potential. And I remember in previewing for this show, I had my notes from last year at this time and looking at it, and we had Jaden Terry on there, and Coach Stiegel, I believe in his interview, had mentioned he was the fastest guy on the team, and we were kind of, how much can we read into that? Is he going to be playing a lot? What's he going to do? And we both kind of thought that he was going to have a strong season, but then week one right away comes out and is scoring touchdowns on long runs. And of course, as Tyson Mann unfortunately had battled some injuries last year, he was kind of forced to take that lead back role and getting a lot of carries, and he didn't miss a beat doing that. Put up big numbers and doing so there. But I think now the hype train is really moving full steam ahead when you look at everything from a year ago to the potential to the potential now and kind of where he's at and where he could potentially be by the end of his career. I think you're starting to see a lot of people recognize that. Yeah, and again, like I said, the offensive line, you're returning, when you count Jay Wyson, who played as a sophomore towards the end of the year, you have both tackles, plus Mike Medeois, who's going to be able to bounce around between, tight end, he's going to wear 300-pounder tight end wearing 87. If every touchdown pass he catches is going to be the most electric call I'm going to make all year long. But you have him able to move in. You move AJ Dahan to center. So there's experience. There's guys that cycled in so much last year that all return. It's the running backs and Jaden get the billing for good reason. But this offensive line is so good. They're also, for the most part, young in a lot of regards as well, with sophomores and juniors playing in roles. I think that's also what's very exciting. They have to play both ways some, these guys, but because they're so deep, they'll be able to keep them, they'll be able to keep them fresh because there's such a depth to rotate through, especially when you're pounding the ball. They have the depth to be able to do it. They have the size. Like, this offensive line's a really, really, it's a group that reminds me on paper a little bit of the 2019 group, because 2020 they were all seniors, but it reminds me of that 2019 group where you had a lot of juniors and sophomores all on that line at once. And, through 2 weeks, and until Jaden Van Dusen had his injury, they were the best running team by a mile, averaging like 700 yards rushing, 600 yards rushing each game in the state. And there are some things about this team and the 2019 team that are similar to me. I think, definitely a lot of similarities when you look at the experience at the running back position, the offensive line, the versatility they've got there. the depth, as you talked about, when injuries are kind of an inevitable thing, and you don't want to plan for them necessarily, but it's nice to know that you've got the guys that can switch along the line there, position-wise, where they've got a tight end that can play tackle, and then you've got right down the line, you can shift guys around, and you're not just locked into one unit, and if one guy goes down, you're in a bad position. You've got a lot of different flexibilities there, and I think when you've got Cash Ruff now at quarterback and can provide an athletic quarterback option there, filling in for Carson Smith, who ran the offense really well for the Bulldogs last year. I think now a lot of potential again for him to run the offense as he becomes the full-time starter. But really top to bottom, I think offensively especially, you see potential at a lot of different positions, a lot of depth, and that's where you start to see some of the expectations for this team.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the quarterback yet, which, I mean, that's kind of Grandville's offense in general. We didn't talk about as much. But, I mean, Cash Ruff, coming in, and he didn't get his full chance last year in that game against Caledonia to take the reins, and Ethan Newville played quite a bit also, I'll say, in the scrimmage then last time as well, and he looks like a very more than capable backup. But the ceiling for Cash Ruff, at his size, his athleticism, back to that 2019 team with some of what Jaden Van Duzen the first couple weeks as a runner also in that system. Plus, Coach Stiegel talks about Cash has a big arm. Like, that's it. All those pieces kind of come together in that sort of way. Like, Cash has one of the higher ceilings that I think we've seen in a Grandville quarterback in quite a few years. And all that makes the offense just so exciting. Depth of tight ends. The offense is exciting. Defensive side of the ball is where there was a little bit more struggle last year. There was a lot, there were some injuries, and there was quite a bit of plug and play going on. And the question always in the OK Red is, you're building a different defense in the Red now than what you had to 4 or 5 years ago. When we started, West Ottawa ran a spread, and that's pretty much it in the Red. The Caledonia's running the wishbone. They're running the double wing at Grand Haven and Rockford, and I think when you came on was, I think, Hudsonville's first year, maybe the spread. My first year doing this back in 17, 18, whatever it was, they were, like, Hudsonville was still running double wing too. So not that long ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the OK Red was power. Now everyone's throwing the ball. Everyone's running the ball out of the spread if they do run the football. Rockford threw the ball 40 times a game last year. So, it's a little bit different thing. And the one thing about this defense is the linebackers are all young. Got a junior, Graverson, pair of sophomores to either side. The front line rotates a lot. They're a little bit undersized, but that isn't necessarily the end of the world, because they're going to be asked to do different things defensively than what a Grandville defense has had to do power on power in years past.
Yeah, I think part of it's due to losing some senior talent last year, but also you get a lot of younger players in there, and kind of seeing that shift is trying to match what the offenses are throwing at you. When they are trying to attack vertically a little bit more, throwing the football around, spreading the field out, and you get some younger players in there, maybe a little bit undersized, but got some speed that can fly around the field and try to counter what the offense has been throwing at them. I think Coach Landis does a tremendous job of kind of figuring guys out, where they can best be positionally for the defense to fly around the field, and they like to mix things up. Just naturally within this defense, they do a pretty good job moving guys around. So it'll be interesting to see the development in this young team, what they're able to do, the changes that they make defensively to kind of solve some of the issues that they had last season.
Yeah, one of my X factors. You have to see who's going to fill that. I don't know exactly what they call it. I'll call it the Viper role. I think it's been like Aiden Doran the last couple of years. Saw Kriska a couple of years ago, kind of fill that kind of hybrid. Even play everything from nickel corner to edge rusher a little bit sometimes in terms of that spot. Who's going to fill that role this year? I think one X factor is Emery Moody, as a guy we saw came up as a sophomore late in the year. Coach Stiegel talked about him as kind of one of his first main ends. I think he may be in that role a little bit. He's gotten a lot bigger this offseason. Looks like a real physical freak potentially in that sort of edge rushing position. So that's the question: is how are guys going to fill in? There's so much depth in the secondary as well. Because obviously you aren't going to be able to play. You had a great skill to have a 6'4" or so, a little bit smaller Cash Ruff out there that's roaming as a big corner. He's not going to be out there as much this year because you need to keep him healthy, obviously. But Avon Cott comes back to run the defense out there. So in the key positions at safety, Cott, Graverson, middle linebacker, some of the line, at some of these key positions, they're going to have to bark out signals and so forth. You do return guys that know what they're doing. I'm fascinated. I mean, there's room for, obviously, the defense to grow. They have to play a little bit different position. I think the defense is going to surprise some people. And again, their only experience against other teams came at a a showcase. I'll call it a showcase. It's a scrimmage. There's, showcase where you have Muskegon, who is probably going to be them versus De La Salle for the state championship in D2. They got a couple D1 linemen. They're Muskegon. And then Belleville, which Belleville, if you don't know, has the best player in the country at quarterback who stood there and is 30 pounds heavier than we last saw him and just stood there delivering darts, and they didn't sub him out once. He stood there against third teams and just still dotted guys up. They were committed that Bryce Underwood was going to make every throw, and son of a gun, he made every throw. So they've seen the best of the best now in terms of their scrimmage, in terms of what that defense is going to be stressed to, because not only Belleville has that, they had like one kid on their offensive line who was 6'7", 390 pounds, and that might be underselling it. That was at one of the guard spots. So for sure, they've seen the best of the best in terms of the defense already to kind of learn from, and got to jump into it. Tough start. Coach Stiegel talked about it in terms of that non-conference schedule, but to wrap up the Grandville talk, it's always going to come down to one thing, and it's that Caledonia-Rockford hump, and we'll talk about it a little bit in the next segment, the OK Red preview, because it's not a down year, but, you have a Caledonia team that lost the quarterback and lost some other big pieces from a near-state title team. Rockford's turning some things over. That even though this is kind of year one of a couple, potentially, this window that we talked about, also there's an opening this year, I think, with those teams, and that's where it's going to come down to. Can they stay healthy, and can they beat those teams? They beat Cal a couple years ago last. It's been even longer since they last beat Rockford. Came so close in that overtime game in 2020, but I guess they came close in the overtime game in 2021 as well. But that's going to still be the question for this program, is you're going to have to see Rockford at least in the playoffs, and can you get over that hump?
Yeah, I think that's really what this all boils down to. Everything we've talked about and previewed, and for this upcoming season, there's a couple different times where you really kind of don't know the perfect time to bring it up, but we'll get into it now. Is that right at the end of the day, that's who they've got to beat. They know the teams in front of them. They know it's going to come down to beating Rockford. It's going to come down to having to beat Caledonia. It seems that they've played well against at times, but have just kind of struggled to get that win, especially in the postseason. The last three seasons, all ending against two against Rockford, one against Caledonia. So, yeah, you're going to see them once again, of course, in the regular season, but more than likely going to be in the playoffs once again. And so, there's been a lot of really, really great things about this Grandville football program throughout the last couple of years and what they've been able to build. And now it's just the final hurdle that's standing in between them and winning the OK Red, and as well as making a deeper run into the playoffs are those two teams right there. And so at the end of the day, I think the success of the season is going to come down to how do you do against those two teams right there.
All right. I think that concisely wraps up, and we'll have more to talk about when we actually preview and give our predictions and stuff on the OK Red and beyond. All right, we'll quick step aside. When we come back, we'll get into those OK Red, our preview / picks for the year. We'll also give our preseason Power 6, as we call it, and pick all our prospective OK Conference champions. So we'll jump into that now.
Can you identify your number one personal trait? The thing that you do better than most others? If not, this may be a good time to think this through. If you're really good at writing, then why use the phone? If you're great on the phone, why use email? If you have exceptional human relation skills, why sit back and let others lead? I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities Company. Playing to our strengths is something we do very well at Centennial. And if you're already a customer, you know what I mean. If not, isn't it about time?
Member SIPC and FIN.
Hey everyone, Nate Dreyer from MGN, and MGN merch now available for purchase, and we have got a ton of options. Here's where you find the new MGN shop. Go to MichiganGameNight.com. Many of you have probably been there before. Click on the shop merch tab. Many of you have probably been to the MGN page on Michigan Sports Radio. Click on the Buy MGN merch tab. It'll take you here. We've partnered with Teespring, neat company that allows for us to have a lot of different shirt designs. They'll print them, they'll make them, they'll ship them out to you. So a neat way that allows us to have a lot of offerings. We've got a ton of really cool t-shirts, hats, snapback, dad hats, beanie hats, water bottles, more t-shirts, more sweatshirts, just a ton of options. Really, just a ton of options that you're going to be able to look through and find exactly what you may want. We've done what we can, like I said, with Teespring to try to stack this thing. We'll have plenty more options that we'll put up on social media, but make sure you check it out. All right, here we go. OK Red, season preview. OK Power 6 for the preseason, and also it's our preseason show, so we'll hand out some awards and superlatives within the OK Red as our primary focus there here on our Tailgate Report season preview. All right, OK Red. So first off, last year, let's just run through, if you forgot, how things ultimately wound up finishing within the OK Red. Rockford won the conference at 7-0. They won that showdown pretty convincingly against Caledonia. Lost the rematch in the playoffs. Caledonia 6-1 second. They got the last laugh and went all the way to Ford Field, where they got to see Bryce Underwood, the aforementioned Bryce Underwood, who continues to be a swirling talking point in almost all discussions in Michigan high school football still, as he kind of continues to build. I mean, that team is ready to win. They're going to win 4 straight state championships. I mean, we'll see. But who knows? Maybe another team. Maybe one of us will make a stupid prediction later about some of that. We'll see. Grandville then 5-2, lost to Rockford, lost to Caledonia. East Kentwood was 4-3. Hudsonville was 3-4. West Ottawa 2-5. Jenison 1-6, and Grand Haven did not win a game last year within the conference. And I mean, look at it. Rockford's got a new quarterback. Cal's got a new quarterback. Granville's got a new quarterback. East Kentwood returns Joppy. Hudsonville, new quarterback. West Ottawa, new quarterback they're really high on. Jenison will have a new quarterback. Grand Haven brings back Rodriguez, who was a sophomore. So a lot of turnover for what we mentioned earlier. Quarterback heavy, a lot of passing team. I mean, again, you got Rockford, air raid. Caledonia, power spread running attack. Grandville, East Kentwood, power spread, some I form. Hudsonville, they're more air raid. Last year, they'll probably go back to running. West Ottawa going to throw it around. Jenison, the shogun. Grand Haven, who knows what they're going to look like this year. But, you know, there's a lot of change. It's a year where there's more, I would say, we'll start with this before we get into our predictions. This has got to be in the same way that this is one of the most fascinating Grandville teams we've had to talk about preseason. This is one of the more fascinating years of like we really don't know what the OK Red is going to look like. There's a top 3 that I think people feel pretty confident about will be your top 3, but the order behind that could get really shaken up, and even maybe some teams in that mid-tier could be better than expected. Some teams from the top tier maybe even could drop down, and a lot of these teams are one injury away from looking a lot different.
Yeah, I think just going into the season, looking at it, you look at some of the teams at the top, as you said, at least for me, I've got kind of a clear-cut 3 that'll more than likely, I'm thinking, being at the top all season long. But
you'll be stunned, but the 3 are.
But, I mean, there is an argument out there that each of those 3 teams are having to replace things and could theoretically be taking a step back, or maybe, I don't know, not necessarily underachieving from last year's standard that they set, but that potentially is out there. And I think also the teams that were towards the bottom of the OK Red, you can look at some of the coaching staff changes that were made and some of the momentum that's kind of going their way to where those teams at the bottom that were the 6th, 7th, and 8th that you mentioned last year in the finished standings that could potentially be getting better and kind of getting closer to that middle of the pack in terms of talent range. So I think there is kind of a gray area there in the middle a little bit once you get past maybe those top 3.
Okay, what's best way to do this is we'll do our predictions the same way that we normally do our weekly rankings. We'll go 3 at a time, 8, 7, 6. I'll start 8th. I do have Jenison falling to last in the conference this year. 7th, I have Grand Haven. I think they may be in a tier of their own. I do think those 2 teams, I think Grand Haven with Rodriguez, with some of their really young talent, they had new coaching staff, so many question marks, they may jump up those rankings more than expected. Jenison's turning over a lot of stuff, too, and obviously they've got, D1 experience at the head coaching position with Coach Zeitman. I think his son potentially might even be the quarterback. Well, I don't know exactly how things are going to end up rolling, and then I have my biggest surprise, maybe at 6. In the past, I believe, was it last year that I picked Hudsonville to win?
Yeah, I believe it was.
I'm 6 this year. So I was wrong on that last year, so they'll probably win it this year. So congrats, Eagles fans. But so I have Jenison 8, Grand Haven 7, Hudsonville 6. We'll give yours, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, yeah, we're same line of thinking there. I've got Jenison 8 as well, and Grand Haven 7. I have not bumped Hudsonville down to 6. I've got West Ottawa at 6. Okay. I think, as I mentioned, I think they're on the right track. I think on the rebound in terms of where they've been, but I've still got them at 6. I think Jenison, we've seen them have some struggles throughout the last couple of years. I think Grand Haven and Jenison really, at the end of the day, probably going to be pretty similar there. It'll be interesting to see where they're at head-to-head, but I think, maybe the changes in Grand Haven with some of that talent returning, I think they've got the slight edge there.
I guess without confusing where do you have Hudsonville at 5?
I've got Hudsonville 5.
Okay,
yes,
so I have
yes.
West Ottawa 5.
Okay,
so
we
we'll
flip them.
just do one more here. So that I think is the most fascinating talking point is where those teams are, because Hudsonville, again, I don't know who the quarterback is necessarily going to be. Obviously, Carson Dykstra, running back, comes back. I think they've got a couple options at quarterback. I think they had a safety last year that also had played some quarterback. But you're replacing a guy in Trey Carr that they'd have throw the ball 40 times a game, and they had big targets that he was spreading it around to. So it's going to be a lot. I think it's a team that's going to look more like kind of their 1920 teams in terms of the way they're going to run the ball, and maybe that helps them.
It could be.
Maybe they wind up finishing 3rd or 4th because they kind of get back to like what has worked for them in the past versus trying to spread around some of these different targets. I'm fascinating to kind of see some more reports on what they're going to look like, but I think that's one of the more interesting things in West Ottawa with the new stadium. Unfortunately, we aren't going to see them this year again, but with the new stadium and with some of those different things, I'm very interested to see where they line up. But I think that's the main line of thinking is Hudsonville, West Ottawa. Where do they finish? Because I could see both of them nearly breaking top 3. I could see both of them falling down in the only winning a game or 2 sort of range.
Yeah, I think Hudsonville, a team, as you mentioned, has had a lot of talent and has been in the talking right there with the 3 teams, or the 3 or 4 teams that we haven't mentioned yet in terms of being at the top of the OK Red. And so I think you just really haven't heard a ton out of the Hudsonville camp this year, and maybe that's a good thing. But I think when you look at the talent that they lost, and after some disappointing seasons with some really talented players there, of course, brutal schedules that they had to play the last couple seasons, I think anybody in the OK Red really could make that argument. But Hudsonville, especially with the non-conference games, too, that they've played. But I think at the end of the day, I've kind of got it looking at it a little bit closer now here outside, or these bottom 5 to 6 teams can kind of be broken up into 2 to 3 team sections where Jenison, Grand Haven feel like they're going to be pretty similar. West Ottawa, Hudsonville, I think are the same there, at least from the start of the season.
I think the 4th place team could be kind of with them as well.
I agree.
I assume we both have East Kentwood
Correct.
and 4. They're a fascinating team to me, I think, because they do return a quarterback. They do return a lot on the line. They do return a running back in LSA Kondo, who kind of down the stretch in the year looked good. Stellan Bowman back as well. He's a D1 committed. I think Ohio D1 committed.
I believe so.
Linebacker and fullback, running back. So, they're going to be tight end. I think they'll move them around quite a bit based on they run so many different. They go everything from power I to spread. So they're in there, and then there's the top 3. So the top 3 is what everyone's going to mostly have the same, and I think everyone's going to have I think you're going to see a lot of different orders. I think you're going to see the order one of us has probably be different than what the order of most people have, because I probably have. Everyone knows what I did. So, so I have 3 Rockford. Who do you have 3?
This is surprising. I actually have Rockford 3 as
well. We
well.
both have Rockford. Okay, perfect. I like this discussion point. So Drake Irwin's going to be their quarterback. They had a discussion, or that's the leaning, it seems. There was kind of a discussion on where it would go because Seth Anderson, Mikey DeKuyper, they'll fit into receiver roles, but it sounds like Irwin's going to be the quarterback. They're replacing a lot everywhere. Ryan Ahern's back for his 12th season there. And I think he's going to play both ways. And they have a couple. They have 106 kids on this roster this year. That's the one thing I will say. Yep. And you know what? They still have like 80 helmets extra.
Yep.
Because they still have 2 helmets for each player and 12 jerseys and 4 video boards. Did you see the video board they're putting in the basketball arena over at Rockford State? The Jumbotron?
Really? Oh, yeah.
A video Jumbotron hanging from the side. That's the side point. So that's what's going on at Rockford State. So we have them 3rd. They'll win the conference like they always do. 2-1. Then I believe we probably have slightly different, because there's one team that went to Ford Field last year. They returned most of their offensive line. They returned most of their talent. And obviously they should win the conference, right? Wrong. Because I don't care. I have bought in to this team. I believe there's a lot of talent. I believe it is my job to say it and to speak out and to juice the polls as a reliable, independent journalist and media member that whatever. I do have Grandville over Caledonia. So we can talk about that, because I'd assume you don't.
I do not. No,
he does not.
I've got Grandville 2, Caledonia to win the OK Red this year.
Okay. So Cal, of course, replacing a quarterback. Mason McKenzie, I said all down the stretch. Now, we both, if we're being honest, we were probably not the highest show on Caledonia for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year. And then their offense, and then Mason McKenzie scored 7 touchdowns against Grandville thanks to 12 holding calls. Missed. See, I told you, I'm on your side, Grandville people. I am with you. But it didn't matter. They dominated the trenches. They dominated everyone. I mean, the Rockford game, they lost, and they came back and I mean, they went to Ford Field. They led the state championship against a team with 50 D1 NCAA players for through the third quarter of that game. But you're replacing the quarterback off that team. That was a Mr. Football contender, as I was going to say, in Mason McKenzie. And I think Brody Betzer, the junior, they like him more as a thrower. I think we'll probably see him. I think Blake Heron may play some quarterback, which would probably lead to a little bit more power running. I think Coach Pennington likes some of his receivers, kind of based on some of the conversations I've heard. So, they'll reload. That they return most of that offensive line as well. That's the reason to talk about them. But also, the reason why they could be down is you are still replacing Mason McKenzie, and you do have an offense that, regardless who you go with at quarterback, and even if you mix and match them, it's going to be a different-looking offense. You lose Carlo Ibar from the inside of that defense as well. So that is where the question marks are with them. Granville's got their question marks, too, that I'm willing to ignore. But,
Right.
But that's where the question, that is the whole conference and the whole, maybe even Division II, lies on how well can Coach Pennington and those guys kind of remake themselves with the new pieces that plug in, along with all the other great talent that does return.
Yeah, there's no doubt that having to replace a player like Mason McKenzie is a tough task. I think the production that he had last season, the way he just willed that team along at sometimes, I think that's obviously huge shoes to fill, and we're not exactly sure which direction they'll be going there yet. But I think when you return so many pieces and so many still next-level talent all around the football field, I think that there's just a lot there that you can find a quarterback that can kind of just to fill that role. It doesn't have to necessarily be the exact role that Mason McKenzie had last season, but I think you can find a guy with some of the names that you mentioned there that can step in and, maybe not going to have the same numbers, but is going to be able to lead the offense well enough and play elsewhere too, wherever whoever ends up stepping up there. But I think the team around the quarterback position is good enough, and you saw what they were able to do last year. That whether or not a return trip to Ford Field is in the cards or not, I'm not sure. But I think when you're talking about winning the OK Red, I think definitely possibility.
And listen, and there's, I said it in kind of a joking manner at first, like, I'm just going with Grandville. I'm not just going with Grandville. I'm actually saying it with my chest a little bit, because like we said a moment ago, this could be one of the best run games in the state. They have, I would argue, it's giving away some of my preseason awards, I believe the best running back in the state of Michigan plays for the Grandville Bulldogs. I believe a lot in the ceiling of a lot of these players. There's a reason why I feel the way I do about Grandville, and I believe they have a lot of new guys that I actually am pretty high on defensively, and I think they can do well within this conference with different things that they have to do. And I am saying, you had them second too, so It's like I am saying it with my chest, like I do actually believe preseason that this is year 1 of 2 that I think Grandville can win this conference, especially in a year that's a little bit rebuilding-y. And next year will be another rebuilding-y type year, for some of these teams, other teams as well. So that's the OK Red. I guess let's expand our horizons. It's the Power 6. It's everyone's favorite segment that we came up with so that we aren't doing the same as everyone else, because otherwise I feel like we're just copiers. So we have our new idea. This is year 3 of the Power 6. If you haven't watched before, there are 6 OK sub-conferences. We each week say who's atop that conference. The preseason show is our preseason prediction of who's going to win the conference. We just said the OK Red. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Yep. I have Grandville. He has Caledonia. That's the OK Red. How about the OK Green? You go first.
Okay, we talked about it, hinted at it earlier in the show.
Yeah.
I think we probably went the same direction here, but I've got Muskegon. Again, tons of returning talent. It's Muskegon. They've got playmakers all around the field. I got to do a couple of their games, or a game or two of theirs the last couple seasons, and they've got Mackay guy coming back as well. So I think definitely another successful season for the Big Reds. I've got them winning the green.
I think 2 Division I linemen on that team, plus all the other talent. Yeah. I mean, they are very, very good. Mona Shores, smaller numbers. I think they'll be down a little bit from some of what we saw. They lose some good pieces on that offensive line from the team that, they were winning that game early against Muskegon until Muskegon just overwhelmed them. Of course, Muskegon goes all the way until they lose to Oregon/UCLA/Colorado quarterback Dante Moore. But no, that Muskegon team is really good. Zeeland West, keep an eye out for them because Coach Shillito. I know he feels good about the talent. He has some good returners, but they're gonna. I think they'll probably be more second place in that tough conference. But I think it's going to be kind of Muskegon to win. I think it's going to be kind of Muskegon to steamroll. Head to head, Muskegon can probably. I think they're beating almost anyone in West. Again, they have to move up to D2 this year. That's the one storyline with them is they can't just play D3 this year, which kind of sucks for them that they, like the year that Dante Moore is gone from King, they have to move up to D2 and play Dan Roan's DeLaSalle team, which has as much talent as, can I say money can buy on the internet? I mean, that's what I mean. But, so yeah, that's the OK Green. OK White. I'll go this time. I mean, Forest Hill Central, they went to the state championship game. They bring back a couple D1 guys. They bring back a lot of that same talent. I think Forest Hill Central can pick right back up and not miss a beat, and they'll have a heck of a couple playoff games coming against Cal and potentially Muskegon.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think Forest Hill Central, they're a conference to lose at this point, bringing back a lot of experienced players from that team. I did believe I saw it was Tim Rogers, head coach last season there at Forest Hill Central. Okay. So I think there's a good chance he goes out winning the conference.
No, I agree. And that's, the White, I feel like, is always a conference that winds up confusing us some. Look out, Byron Center was your and I's kind of team to watch all year ever since we saw them against Grandville, and I think that could be somewhat similar. Again, this year that's always a conference I like to watch for a couple weeks to kind of figure out how it figures, but I think this year there's a pretty clear front runner there. Another conference where you have a team obviously reloading, but I think there's going to be a clear front runner. There's going to be a clear front runner really in, we talked about the red in depth, but really in most of these, the OK Blue. I mean, the OK Blue, of course, one of the conferences that's getting really blown up once the new configurations come in. So kind of the last year of this group, who do you have in the OK Blue?
In the blue, I've got West Catholic.
Yep.
I think.
Okay. As do I.
Yep. Coming off their state championship there, I think a good chance. I think really could be pretty open outside of maybe West Catholic at the top. I think a conference that has a lot of teams kind of in the middle of the road there that could potentially jump up and be a contender, but I've got West Catholic to win.
No, I agree. Of course, you have to replace Tim Kloska.
Of course, yep.
Good luck, but they have enough other talent to be able to do that, and it's kind of a little bit of the what our rankings probably for the OK Red should have been, which is you have to beat them to move past them, and no one's beaten Rockford for the last few years, so they probably should have the benefit of the doubt, yet we never give them the benefit of the doubt, and they always win it. And I think it's similar. Unity Christian, of course, they'll be interesting, as always, but this is kind of the first year that they truly have moved on from the state should have been state championship team.
Yep.
They lost all the skill players that year. They lost some of the linemen, some of the juniors that played, as well on that team now. So they've kind of fully moved on, have to fully reset from that team. It'll be interesting. Yeah, there's other teams there as well that, can make some noise. But Spring Lake's graduated, a lot. I talked to one of Hamilton's coaches a while back. I think they have some amount of confidence that I think they've got some exciting players. I don't see them winning the conference, but I think it's going to be a little bit more open, but I feel pretty confident in what West Catholic's place within that conference is going to be. OK Gold, I actually wrote something down that I'm actually going to go the other way on because I saw something else. So, OK Gold, you go first.
Okay, the Gold, I've got South Christian going maybe the obvious answer. I'm not sure where you're going here, but replacing Jake Tahn at quarterback, obviously going to be an issue there, but I think still a lot of playmakers, seeing some of the names that could be potentially playing quarterback for them again, along with all the weapons that were on last year's team. I think they're going to be in a pretty good spot to repeat there in the gold.
So I wrote South Christian first. And then I saw some reports of what's going on down at Cougars camp. And I think Grand Rapids Catholic Central has a little bit more returning.
Okay.
They're, kind of running back position, and so I think they returned quarterback as well from last year's team. And I think I don't see Catholic Central not winning 2 years in a row.
True.
So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Is
just playing the odds.
And I think they have 3-4 good options to replace at the quarterback position for South Christian, but you're also that's quite the guy in Dahan that you're trying to replace. So that's where, and the thing is, whoever you replace him with, because it's pretty much the group of receivers / their basketball backcourt,
right?
You have to also, you're losing one of the receivers in order to replace him. So that's where I think they're going to be. I think they'll be slightly down. I think Catholic Central will be slightly up from last year. And last year was razor thin between the two. So if one's slightly down, one's slightly up, I'm going to give that slight nod. That's why I actually wrote South Christian but changed my mind after I saw another report on them. So we will go slightly different. It will be one of those two.
Yep.
Of course, as it always is. Actually, it always is Catholic Central. South Christian just messed this up for us recently. OK Silver.
Yep.
Yep. They exist. Again, I don't know. Comstock Park had a lot of injuries. They aren't my pick. Comstock Park, obviously so good a couple years ago. A lot of injuries last year. Sparta always rebuilds well. Hopkins always rebuilds well. It's the winner in this conference might have 2-3 losses in conference, honestly. Unless there's something that we're complete. Again, this is why we're the second best, if not third best, West Michigan high school football podcast. I guess I'm going to have to go Sparta.
Okay.
I think that's just where I'm going to be. I could be, you might change my mind on that opener.
We'll see if I can do that. I'll openly admit, this is always one of the more difficult ones for me, just to try to figure this out. And I feel a little bit justified, and I believe I saw that there's been 4 different champs in the last 6 years, so kind of a lot of changing. So there hasn't really been a power in that conference so much. So I went a little different direction. I've got Hopkins. I think they finished. That
was my other. It was between those two.
They'd finished third last year. It was pretty close, as you said. They all kind of beat each other up. Had a couple losses. Their Belding, I believe, was the.
Hang on a second, folks. I forgot about Belding. We saw them in the playoffs.
We did, yeah.
They're my pick.
Okay. He's going.
You know what?
So I changed
one of Sparta, Hopkins, or Belding. That's my pick.
Okay,
Can I do that?
We narrowed it down.
Just write it down. That's my pick. That's less than half.
So I changed your mind, just not with the team that I actually picked.
Okay.
That makes sense. No, I think Hopkins maybe a little bit more history, winning the conference there too. So not a real strong reason, and maybe I could convince myself now to go Belding as well, but I'll go Hopkins.
Why do people watch this? Okay. So there's your OK Power 6. We just make Power 5 and drop the silver because we always say something stupid.
Yeah.
Actually, wasn't it the 1 year you just kept doing Sparta? Was that last year or 2 years ago? You just kept doing Sparta and they lost 3 out of their first 4 and they came back and won it?
Yep, I know.
So,
I think it was Sparta. Yeah, I had them picked and then they lost 3. I finally dropped them, said I can't do it anymore. And then after that they went on a run. And I think they ended up, I don't know where they finished, but they did really well after I dropped them.
All right, let's just do some preseason awards and let's get out of here and let the people get out of here because they got to be sick of it. No one's watching anymore. They were here for Coach Stiegel and they left after that anyway. So that's what I would do at least. All right, so preseason awards. We have surprise teams from the west side that we think will be state champions, which I'm sure we won't abuse a whole bunch of this or this or this or this out of a certain division. Best team, preseason bet, who's going to be the best team overall, who's going to be the player of the year, who's going to be the coach of the year. Let's start with surprise teams. And this is one that is a little bit more open. I don't think it's just naming one. I'm focused on the OK Red here. And it kind of comes back to some of those teams talking about that could be kind of surprising. I don't think it's going to be a team that's going to jump up and win the conference, but I am going to stake a little bit to West Ottawa. as a team that's going to, I think, win a game or two more than people expect. East Kentwood may be in the same vein, but there's something about West Ottawa. Obviously, Coach Collins, great coach. They have this. They do have quite the new, winning. We got a bad producer on this show. They have quite the winning culture that they're looking to build. They have the stadium. I'm mostly marking them up for the stadium that I haven't been to and I don't get to go to this year because that's another event that again, my fault, that we're going to have to miss. But that's my surprise team looking kind of mainly focused in the OK Red.
Yeah, I think for me, if sticking in the OK Red, if we want to go that way, I would. East Kentwood was kind of the team I had circled.
That's the other one I wrote.
I think we're talking about our OK Red preview. I think that's the team of all the rest of the teams in the Red that could maybe sneak up and get one of the teams, whether that's Caledonia, Grandville, or Rockford. I think that's the team you kind of got to watch out for. I'm not sure they're going to be the team that wins it. I'm pretty confident they won't, but I think they're the team that could kind of help decide. I think if we're going outside of the OK Red, a team we had mentioned earlier, Zealand West. I think.
Oh, that's a great pick.
I think they lost a lot of offensive pieces there from what I'd seen, but I think you just got to trust Coach Shillito in that system.
It doesn't matter what they lost offensively.
And as good as Muskegon's going to be, Zealand West played them close a couple times last year. I think there's always a chance that they could go on a playoff run as well. So not necessarily a team that I'm expecting to win the conference, but I think a team that could be dangerous.
Yeah, no, and there's plenty of, they'll be able to avoid Muskegon then in the playoffs as well. So, who knows what they might be able to do. And what's going to be a little bit more open, with Muskegon gone, a little bit more open D3 on the west side of the state that they could have a chance to go for a run. I'm sure you can make an argument for 40 other teams that I think, probably fit that. There's a lot of, I think a lot of the champions are decided, but there's a lot of conferences where like the 5th or 6th best team could easily finish second, sort of deal. I think. All right, what teams from the west side of the state win the championship? Let's do this more in kind of like we'll just list some that are possible. One, I think, I don't want to just say, a team from D2 wins. The problem is, once they get there, they're going to probably have to see De La Salle.
Yep.
So that's the issue. But I do think a team from D2 does, and if you made me pick, I believe Muskegon is going to win the state championship this year. I mean, they got so close last year, and they bring a lot back, and they're better this year than they are last year. I do have Muskegon. I think a D5 team wins between Catholic Central or West Catholic. I think Catholic Central, out of those two, I think is a little bit more poised to be able to do so. And I truly believe it's also a get to Ford Field versus win. Someone from the OK Reds going to Ford Field this year. And I think you can circle the district championship game in D1, possibly between, it'll likely be Grandville Rockford. We'll see how things play out. But we saw the path last year. It's a team with Caledonia. It's a team from the middle of the state that, I think it's a potentially a little bit lower level of competition, or the kinds of teams that you see. And then, it depends on how the bracket all gets drawn. If Davison or one of these teams sneaks over, it becomes more difficult. Then you have to beat someone good, really, really good from the other side of the state. But if you're Grandville, for example, they don't know the T, and then in the championship game. So those are my initial most certain. I think a D4 team probably has a chance to, but I think if you made me say I think Muskegon wins, I think Grand Rapids Catholic Central probably goes, and I think, I don't know if they win, but I don't think they can beat Belleville or Cass Tech. But I think an OK Red team is going to Ford Field again this year. Yeah,
I think we had a lot of the same teams there. That the D1 path is definitely going to be a difficult one, especially, as you said, in the state championship game. So when it comes down to strictly, are you going to win the state championship, D1 is going to be a tough one. Yes. But I think you saw the path. Caledonia showed them last year the path as far as Rockford or Granville.
They led through 3 quarters.
Whoever wins that game is going to have that same opportunity to try to repeat that path and get to the state championship game and see what happens. But moving down from there, Caledonia and Muskegon both in D2 there. I think Muskegon probably the easiest pick for me to say for sure wins the state championship. Not for sure, but maybe the easiest pick for me to say they might.
The easiest pick is to say a D2 team from the west side of the state from the OK conferences for sure will be in the championship game. Whether it's them, whether it's Forest Hill Central, whether it's Caledonia, one of them will be there. That's probably the easiest thing to say.
Right. I agree with you on that.
So, yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't think it's going to be interesting because I don't know. Last year there were so many West Side teams there, so many West Side state champions. I don't know if it's going to be the same this year. Do you have any others, or is that all you have for now?
That was pretty much every team I had, yeah.
About what I had to. Like I said, that's a little bit more of a kind of talk it over type of situation right there. All right, this is a little bit more cut and dry. Best team, best player, best coach. What's the best order to do this in? Let's do it the opposite way. So let's go coach, player, team. Let's start with best coach. So if Grandville is to go from where they were, the young team, and to win the OK Red, like I said they would, he was on earlier, Eric Stiegel, coach of the year for West Michigan. That's my pick. If things do go with what my predictions are, he would have to be coach of the year in my opinion.
Yep.
So Eric Stiegel, my pick.
Okay, I like that pick. I think I had a couple different directions really for all these. I mean, there's multiple directions I kind of could have gone. I think I'm really still deciding here kind of live. I got a couple names on my list. I think I'm going West Catholic head coach Landon Grove. I think it will be my pick. Won the state title last year. Of course, this is prediction award for this year, not so much last year, but it kind of factors in, I guess, for me when it terms of what he accomplished. I think making the move to E5, but we talked about them potentially winning the blue again earlier in the show, but I think a chance there for another really successful season. I think in doing so in year 2 of his staff there at West Catholic could really establish himself.
No, I mean, like, if they do go on and they are a team that contends for another state title and wins their conference and so forth, like, that's a team that he had to turn it around and rebuild it. And I think that's, if you're looking for a coach, you're looking at who is a coach that took a team either from the very bottom to the near top or from the middle to the very top. And I think that's a good pick, and that's why I have Coach Stiegel with that group for my pick. All right, best player. I'll let you go first.
Okay. I don't know if we're going to have the same here.
Probably.
Okay. Well, I've got it. I'll mix it up. I've got a name.
Actually, I kind of have two. You'll see what I'm going to do, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got a name that I want to say. I think it's going to be yours, so I'm going to go to the other one. I'm going to pick Mackay guy from quarterback.
That's a good pick.
You've seen him now for a couple years and what he can do leading the Muskegon offense. Got the chance to see him on the basketball court as well, just the all-around athlete that he is. I think a special senior season in store there, and talked about what Muskegon could do in terms of a team accomplishment as well, but I think he'll have a big number seasons-wise.
So, again.
Season numbers-wise.
Yes,
that's what I meant.
Gotcha. I'll preface it again in saying, like, if Grandville is to win, then they would have to have, the coach has to have a great performance. They probably have to have the best player. So I have two names here, one of which is a name that, like, probably won't win this sort of thing, but I think he will be possibly the most important player, and then it's my pick. The first name I really want to give a shout-out to is Mike Medeiros, because playing some tight end, playing all over the defensive line, playing some tackle, moving around, he's going to have to be a 300-pound Swiss Army knife that does a little bit of everything, and his ability to block, hopefully we'll even see him in the pass game a little bit maybe. See him at tackle, see him inside, big part of the defense. I think if Grandville is to have the season that I predicted that they could have, he'll have to be a very key part of it. Now, here's my player of the year. It's the best. He's the best running. He's a sophomore, but he's the best running back in the state of Michigan. West Michigan player of the year will be Jaden Terry. Yep. I think he's going to put up bonkers numbers in that system. The only thing that might slow down his numbers a little bit is that teams are going to target him so much, and then at that point, then you can almost say some of the production of other players as much can be, because they're going to count in on him so much. He does, I do believe he's going to be the standout player, and I think by the time we get to his senior year, we're going to talk about a player that's just gaining D1 type interest, and the story will be building even more. And again, Michigan Game is the home of Grandville Bulldogs football, so everyone has to come through us for any media reports and stuff going forward. So that is my pick for player of the year. I said honorable mention for Grandville on that side of things. Mike Medeiros could do a lot, but Jaden Terry, I think that was probably the name you were. Yeah,
it was definitely the other name I had. I figured that was the way you were going to go, so I was going to let you have that one. But yeah, I'm right there with you, and I think this is the year he goes from already a really high-level prospect to establishing himself as true high-end D1 talent.
I mean, he deserved, we talked about him, I think we called him, Rookie of the Year or whatever last year. Like, he started to deserve some of that kind of recognition last year already, and now here we are into this year. And I mean, you're taking a guy that rushed for over 1,000 yards, for 13, 14, however many touchdowns it was, and that's what I think. All right, best team. Then I'll go first. I'll let you close.
Okay.
This probably goes more along the line of some of your last picks. I think I already kind of showed my hand here. I think it's gonna be Muskegon.
Yep.
And you're with me?
I'd had Muskegon. I figured picking Mackay guy as my player of the year, and then kind of having to go along with that as team of the year. I think. It's the same debate we just had about the West Side champs. Is really whoever runs away with the D2, whoever makes the deeper run there. Is going to be the team of the year. I think it's Caledonia was the other team I'd kind of had mentioned. We've already kind of talked about how they're going to be head to head there at some point, or in terms of who's going to go further and have the better season overall. But I think both of those teams are right in that conversation.
No, I agree. I think Muskegon is, they're D2 now, and I think you put them head to head, and this is where the OK Red is maybe a little bit down this year than what they have in years past. I think head to head, Muskegon probably beats anyone from the Red this year. I think they probably beat most of D1. We saw at the scrimmage. If we could see Muskegon versus Belleville in the state championship game, that'd be really awesome to see because they got the size to kind of go up against each other in that regard. All right, there's your show. A little long, but we had to preview the season, I guess. So, Of course, unfortunately, no broadcast this week. We will be back week 2 for the Tailgate Report and our kind of normal show. We'll figure out what we're doing interview-wise. We'll probably start getting into some players or other coaches or something. Kind of based on the way that show goes, we'll try to have something. So we'll have another Tailgate Report next week right back here on the MGN YouTube page and link to all of our sites. And then we have our first game of the year. It'll be a enhanced radio, or whatever we're calling it, broadcast at Davison. So it's the annual MGN road trip to somewhere far off on the other side of the state, or other state, as it often is for Grandville. So that'll be our we only have one, like last couple years we only had one. That's a lot different. So we'll do that. So that'll be our first game. So that's all coming up. And then after that, Grandville, we're going to have Everett will do all Grandville games. For Grandville home games, we'll have video. I don't think there will be any road games that we're doing video for, just the way the schedule plays out. Grandville Rockford, Brock Conkle, Michigan Sports Radio. We'll have that game. We'll be doing something else, either another game, maybe a studio thing. We'll have to figure out what exactly it looks like. That's week 8, so everything else will be at Caledonia. Hopefully not outside, but probably outside at Caledonia for that game. We'll see. They got turf this year, so maybe next year the press box. Maybe a nice 2-tier big press box. No one on the other side next year. We'll see. I think that's it. This has been the Tailgate Report. He is Chandler. I am Nate. I got it. I got it this time. And we'll see you next time. Football is here. And we'll see you all next time right back here on this show. And then games next week as Grandville takes on Davison on MGN a week from Thursday. By the time this comes out, we'll be up to that. So we'll see everyone next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Tailgate Report.